Right. Well, if you have two shoes, it is time you need to sell one and buy a sword. If you have two trousers, this is the time that you need to sell one and buy a sword. Because now it is a time for revolution. And this revolution is not on the streets. This revolution is not about burning cars, but this revolution is in the mind. Because if the mind has not been transformed, the body cannot do something new or something interesting. Peace and power to you, African families, from wherever you find yourself. Peace and power, peace and blessing to all the global African family, those in the Caribbean, those in the Western Hemisphere, those in India, those abroad, generally speaking, and those at home. Peace and power to you. It is a great pleasure to have you again in this educational program that we have here again, dedicated to our upcoming event or convention that we call uh, we charge colonialism, or um, it's this convention is organized by the Africa Unity Movement for Decolonization. So that's going to happen in July of this year, from the 22nd to the 24th of July this year. So please just look in the description. There's a link there. You can register for the convention. It's going to be very interesting. We have about 300 speakers, from all over the world, actually coming from the Pan-African world. The aim of this convention will be to declare the end of the neo-colonialism, as we know that after the age of colonialism, we are suffering from what we can call neo-colonialism in Africa today. So, in line of this convention for decolonization of Africa, we have this educational program dedicated to bring to the African population an education that will obviously help us to understand the neo-colonialism, and most importantly, how do we get affected by the neo-colonialism, and by understanding how the neo-colonialism affects us is going to be easier for us to actually tackle the solution, or how to end the neo-colonialism, because normally it says that the solution to every problem is the knowledge and understanding of the problem. If you cannot understand the problem as it is, if you don't even know that you have a problem, it's going to be impossible, if not difficult, for you to figure out what kind of solution that you can begin implementing to solve that problem. So we are here to actually bring you insight in terms of new colonialism. We have a lot of things that are happening in the world today. We have war in Russia and Ukraine. We have conflict between America and China. But in most cases, we don't know the major elements or fundamental elements of these wars that we are witnessing in the world today. And if you study well, you will understand that all these things are evolving around the continent of Africa. So, what is your position as African person, right? So that's the need for us to educate, to get education, to be transformed, to be renewed in our mind with a new knowledge, understanding of the world, but most importantly of the situation that is affecting us immediately, which is the situation of colonialism and the neo-colonialism. So, welcome again. Today we are going to have a very interesting show. Today's show, as you can see in the description, is titled "The 5 Ds for Decolonization." 5 Ds of decolonization. And I have a very interesting brother with me here, Brother Cariso from South Africa. I'm going to give him an opportunity to introduce himself. And obviously, he's going to introduce us to the concept of the 5 Ds of decolonization. It's going to be very interesting. I urge you to obviously stick around and also share the video with your, your groups, your WhatsApp groups, your contacts, so that all of us as African people can have to benefit, can have that opportunity to benefit from this very important and very interesting show that we're going to have in the next 1 hour, 5 Ds of decolonization. But before I pass on the mic to Brother Cariso, I just have to remind to all of you that this show, this educational program, is held in relation to the African unity for decolonization. I repeat, is held in relation to the African unity movement for decolonization, which is indeed a a kind of a platform that brings together many different organizations, different Pan-African organizations with the aim to decolonize the African world, with the aim to fight the neo-colonialism and obviously create the conditions of decolonization of Africa. So please look in the description if you haven't registered yet. Please go in the description and obviously register for the event. It's going to be very interesting event as we have a lot of skillful speakers that are coming from all over the world, from the African world to be more precise, will be joining us in that convention that will be taking place from the 22nd of July to the 24th of July. So you are more than welcome to register and to join us, because this is what we need to raise the awareness and then to begin working for the betterment and the reconstruction of Africa, because that is what we need right now. Africa is in ruin and we need to reconstruct Africa. So now, turning back to Brother Cariso, can you just introduce yourself before we actually get into the depth of today's discussion? Let people know who you are and let people actually know what you do, and obviously let people know what you think at this particular moment. But Cariso, the mic is yours. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Brother Kabbalah, for the introduction. My name is Kagiso Kobue. I am currently now in Azania, Southern Africa. So I am an organizer with an organization called Zolabantu. And at Zolabantu, what we do is our goal is to awaken the consciousness of Africans such that they can come to take back their continent, come back to take back their sovereignty, and come to take back their minds from the shackles of colonialism and neo-colonialism. Okay. So I've prepared my presentation here. I'm wondering, can I share my screen?
All right. Do you have? I don't know if you have option to. Of course, the option should be there. All right, King.
Oh.
Thank you very much for your introduction first of all. And
Yes.
yeah, so I think now we're gonna obviously delve into today's discussion about the 5 Ds that will be obviously introduced to us by Brother Cariso, as obviously has introduced himself. So I think now we just have to go into the subjects. By the way, my name is Kabbalah. I'm a member of the African Continental Unity Party, as well as I'm part of the African Unity Movement for Decolonization, as I've just explained it sometimes earlier on. So thank you very much, Brother Cariso. You are free to go forward and obviously share your screen. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Let me see. Can you see my screen?
Not really. I can't see your screen.
Cannot see.
Hold on. I can see. No. I can see it. I'm gonna edit now.
All right. You'll tell me when everything is ready to go.
Now it's ready. I can see module 3, lecture 4.
Okay.
Are you able to?
Brilliant,
Yeah. So I think
brilliant,
the screen
brilliant,
is on.
brilliant. So I think what I'll do is I'll start a bit about Zola Bantu. So, like I said, so our we focus on African spirituality, and our idea is that we have analyzed uh, the structure of colonialism, we have analyzed the structure of neocolonialism, and what we have come to realize is that for us to come up out of the clutches of colonialism and neocolonialism, we must focus on two things. We must focus on one, uplifting people's consciousness, and two, uplifting our economic prowess. So at Olabantu, we have an education program that we have started. We have an educational curriculum that we are putting together, and the 5Ds here is part of it. And my brother Ngayaka, in the last one, actually went into the paradigm and, dove deep into what colonialism is, what neocolonialism is, how it works, and the paradigm of accumulation of riches that came from it. So now with the 5Ds, this is a framework on how to actually free ourselves from the clutches of colonialism, neocolonialism, both on an individual level and on a collective level. Okay, let me move on. So I am your tutor here, Kagiso Kobue. And we will begin today with the quote of the day, which is an African proverb that says, "Truth is freedom, and ignorance is slavery." Okay, now we're going to come to the content of the presentation. We will begin with the classifications of African thought, and then we'll move on to the purpose of the 5Ds. And then we'll go into the first D, which is de-link. We'll move on to the second D, which is decolonize. We will move to the third D, which is decentralize. We will move to the fourth D, which is decommodify. We'll move to the fifth D, which is deglobalize. So now coming to the classifications, we begin by defining what classify means. So to classify is to put things into baskets. As you can see here, we have 4 baskets. The first basket is Mundu. The second basket is Kindu. The third basket is Handu. And the fourth basket is Kundu. So animals, plants, and people all fall into the first basket, which is Mundu. Inanimate objects, a car, a phone, a TV, things that are acted upon by Mundu all fall under the second basket, which is Kindu. Location and time all fall under the third basket, which is Handu. And then ideas fall into the last basket, which is Kundu. So today, Africa and Africans, both in the continent and in her diaspora, are suffering from the tools of exploitation of colonialism and neocolonialism. So colonialism and neocolonialism are ideas. So they both fall under Kundu. Okay, let us move on. Now we come to the purpose of the 5Ds. So the 5Ds lead to freedom and justice. Other words for freedom is liberty, it is autonomy, it is independence, it is self-governance, it is sovereignty. Other words for justice are fairness, equity or equality, goodness, integrity, uprightness. So the 5Ds lead to freedom and justice. So if you do not want freedom, if you do not want justice, then the 5Ds are not for you. But if you want freedom and justice, please listen closely. We will begin with the first D, which is de-link. And we will start by looking at the root of de-link, which is to link. So to link, in other words, means to connect. It means to associate, to relate, to join, to combine, to unite. So we must de-link from the West in all possible ways. Other words for de-link is to disconnect, to disassociate, to unrelate, to separate, to disunite. So we must de-link from the West. We must de-link from Western thought. We must de-link from Western ideas. We must de-link from Western systems. We must de-link from Western media. We must de-link from the West in all possible ways. Coming now to the second D, which is to decolonize. Coming now to the root of decolonize, which is to colonize. So you can see here, I've placed a picture to illustrate what colonialism was. They came here, they took over, they controlled us, both using physical chains and using mental chains. But now, after the time of, in quotations, decolonizations, where we chased them away and we took over the systems, now we are in the age of neocolonialism, where the chains are not on our hands and the chains are not physical, but the chains are on our mind and the chains are mental. So we must decolonize using indigenous knowledge, indigenous tools, and indigenous systems. An example, we can decolonize our mind using our mother tongue. It makes no sense for me to be Tswana, but to speak English better than I speak Setswana. It makes no sense for me to be Tsonga, but to speak Portuguese better than I speak Tsonga. It makes no sense for me to be Congolese, but to speak French better than I speak Kikongo. So we must decolonize our minds by speaking our mother tongues better, either as well or better than we speak the tongue of the colonizer. So if I am Tswana, it makes no sense for me to speak English better than Setswana. I must speak my Setswana just as well, if not better than I speak English. If I am Tsonga, I must speak Setsonga just as well, if not better than I speak Portuguese. If I am Congolese, I must speak Kikongo just as well, if not better than I speak French. Then my mind will be decolonized. Another example of us using decolonize, we can decolonize our institutions using the principle of Ubuntu. So Ubuntu is a way of life, and it has three parts to it. One is love. You must love yourself and love your neighbor like you love yourself. The second is justice. You must be fair in your dealings with others. The third is purity. That means purity of desire, purity of thought, purity of speech, and a purity of action. So if you live in a love, purity, and a justice, then you have Ubuntu. So with Ubuntu, you can use Ubuntu to decolonize your social institutions. You can use Ubuntu to decolonize your political institutions. So if your political institutions are based on Ubuntu, they will be decolonized. Let me quickly drink some water. All right, now coming to the third D, decentralize. And the root of decentralize is to centralize. It means to compact, it means to consolidate, it means to concentrate. So you can see the picture on your right, on our right. It is a depiction of a centralized system where everything is controlled by one center. So in the case of a party, that would be like controlled by a party controlled by one individual. Or in a political system, it will be a political system run by one individual, like a monarchy, for example. So we must decentralize wealth, power, and arms. Coming now to decentralize, in other words, it means to decompact, it means to deconsolidate, it means to deconcentrate. And if we look on our right again, we have a picture of a decentralized system. And I call for us to decentralize wealth, power, and arms, because once these things are decentralized, it will lead to order, it will lead to stability, it will lead to prosperity. And not just the prosperity of a few, but the prosperity of the collective. Now coming to the fourth D of decommodify. Looking at the root of decommodify, which is to commodify. And that leads us now to having to define what a commodity is. So a commodity is anything that can be bought and sold. So an apple is a commodity, a boat is a commodity, a TV is a commodity. So we must decommodify strategic assets, especially people and land. So in the age of colonialism, we saw something called the slave trade, where people were bought and sold like fruits or veggies. And that's why we call for the decommodification of strategic assets, is especially people, because the commodification of people is slavery. And slavery is immoral and inconsistent with the principle of Ubuntu. Another thing, I call for the decommodification of land, because during colonialism, they came here, they stole our land, and now, after the quote unquote decolonization, they want us now to buy back our land. So once we decommodify the land and say the land cannot be sold, then their agenda is essentially dead in the waters. And they'll have to give back the land without any compensation. Now we come to the final D, the fifth D, which is to deglobalize. Now looking at the root of deglobalize, which is to globalize. We now move on to define what to globalize means. And to globalize is to operate on a worldwide scale. And as you can see here, we have a map. We have Africa in the map. We have Africa here. We have Europe here. We have Asia here. We have North America here, South America here. We have Australia here. And we have some other islands. So I call for us as a global African family to deglobalize. Essentially, we must turn our backs on the world, because and come together and discuss something huge that has led to our weakness. So we have been ununified for a long time, And for us to become strong again, we must build unity within our family. And what I suggest is that we work on what I call the Holy Trinity of unity, which is spiritual unity under the principle of Ubuntu, social unity, and economic unity, where we trade amongst ourselves. And this Holy Trinity of unity must be protected by an African militia and an African militia guard, where the militia guard will be there to control the militia should any of them go against the precepts of Ubuntu. Then we will be united, then we will be strong, and then we can come to deglobalize to reglobalize. So once we have our unity, once we are strong, then we can now come to negotiate with the world and negotiate from a position of power rather than a position of weakness. Then we can trade with the world and trade fairly, because now at the negotiating table we arrive as equals rather than as slaves. So that is the final D, deglobalize to reglobalize. So I'll come back again, full circle, now to the purposes of the 5Ds, that the 5Ds lead to freedom and justice. And I'll return back to the quote of the day, that truth is freedom and ignorance is slavery. And recognize how truth is written with a root. Now brings us back to Ubuntu, because Ubuntu is the root of being an African. If you do not have Ubuntu, then you are not African. And second one, ignorance is slavery. So I have now gone through the 5Ds. You can choose to ignore them, but that will only lead to your situation either not changing or getting worse. Okay, that brings me to the end of my short lecture. Kyaleboha, ngiyabonga, asante sana, enkosi.
Thank you very much, Brother Kahiso. That was so powerful. That was indeed powerful. The link, decolonize, decentralize. So I'm not going in in order. I'm just yeah. No, exactly. Yeah, I mean it's that was very interesting presentation there. I think that's the only way we can go about to see a difference, because in most cases we have been following suits all the policies and ideologies of the Western civilization. When you look from the post-independence period, we have been given a lot of recipes for development, They started by telling us for Africa to change, we must embark in what was called modernization. And modernization was well, the premises of modernization theory was actually the that African have to abandon their traditions and the ways of life because that was considered as backwards. It was considered as not modernized or not civilized. So we had to, to abandon our ways of dressing, our ways of, our ways of actually cooking or eating, our ways of studying, everything that has to do with Africa, our ways of, our religious way. So everything that has to do with African traditions and cultures was considered backwardness. And for us to modernize, we had to adopt some of the input from the West so that we can obviously get to be civilized as European are. And we have been in that line. Actually, everything that we want to do it based on what the Western civilization has done. Even it's even interesting when we come to the educational, institutions that we have in our community or in our countries as African people. It's quite interesting to see that Africa, which is the how can I put it, which is the source of knowledge, of wisdom, of philosophy, that is obviously served as the foundation over which the current civilization or the world civilization has built itself upon. Africa has now to take some concepts from Plato, from Socrates, and from all these Western uh, philosophers, so that we can learn about them and so that we can obviously be qualified as educated people. While the very same philosophers were nothing but children to the African philosophers who actually brought civilization to the world. So I think we cannot develop if we don't actually begin by delinking ourselves from the Western thoughts, because um, everything that we have in the world, everything that we buy, whether you buy a product or whether you buy, whether you buy a product or whether you buy you get an advice from a people, that advice or that product or that philosophy is nothing but an ambassador of the culture that has produced it. So it actually means that there's nothing that is neutral as we can talk about, where they talk about any product manufactured is always carrying a cultural identity of people who manufacture it. So by being too much in following, the Western civilization, whatever they do, we are automatically alienating our own culture and our own identity. And there are no people in this world who can position themselves in the center of global politics if they are not yet having that opportunity or that possibility to define themselves with their own distinctive identity. So I think the concept of delinking is very, very important. But I have a question for you with regard to the commoditized. We know that we're living today in a society where everything is actually commoditized, even relationship today, right? You will actually wonder what you can hear from other young men or young women when it comes to relationship. When you ask them, they will tell you that they cannot go into relationship if the partner doesn't have financial means. So, in other words, means even the relationship itself becomes commoditized, because if we go into relationship because by expecting that other parts must have some financial, means so that we can exchange, or we can obviously support each other, not only support each other, but so that it can do for me one or two things that I need, financially speaking. It means also even relationship becomes a kind of commoditized. Today you cannot eat in this world if you don't have money, right? You cannot even sleep if you don't have money, especially in the so-called civilized world or developed world, which is actually a kind of backwardness, because everyone should have a right to eat even if they don't have money, because that is actually the same thing as breathing. You have to breathe even if you don't have money. The same thing as eating, because it's fundamental human right. They are basic needs, rudiments that every human being needs so that it can be alive. So the point is, since we are in the system already, breathing in the system, sleeping in the system, waking up in the system, that has commoditized everything, even the basic needs that can sustain human life. How do we go about decommoditizing, for example, the land or other important things if we really want to change Africa? Because we know that this change also requires some financial means for that, so that we can implement it. So how can we go about applying that concept of sorry,
Decommodify.
decommodify.
Decommodify. Yes, you
Thank
got
you.
it. You got it, my brother. You
I
got it.
wish,
You
I
got it.
wish, I wish I could be speaking Swahili. So it's going to be much better, or even Zulu. But unfortunately, we speak to the African world. Many are
Yeah.
speaking, many are speaking French, many are speaking English, but we need to get them where they are. By the way, how can we go by the commodified while we know that we need money to implement certain things? The mic is yours.
Okay. 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 Um, I think there's no problem, with us, speaking English, It just, we just need to raise our levels. For example, me, over the past years, I've applied the 5 Ds myself. So I have raised my Setswana to the level that I could have done this, what you call this presentation in Setswana, but considering our audience, don't speak Setswana, so English becomes that best. It becomes the best way. So now, I actually spoke about we need to decommodify strategic assets. There's nothing wrong with someone wanting to sell apples. There's nothing wrong with someone who went and did the hard work of building a car, getting rewarded by selling it to someone. There's nothing wrong with somebody who built a wonderful application, go getting rewarded to go and sell it to someone. But there are certain things that should not be sold. For example, I spoke about the selling of people, right? The selling of people should not be done. And the way for us to actually go about, let's say, um, making sure that the selling of people is not done. Me, for example, as a community leader, I can make sure that, let's say, for example, I was the village chief. Being the village chief, I'm the one who makes the rules here. So if I tell the village that if anyone decides to go and sell someone here, there will be consequences. You will go to jail. You will be dragged on the streets and flogged, or you will be put to death. That is a powerful disincentive for people to be selling people. And the people of the village, knowing what will happen to them, will probably not be going around selling people. So that will be a way of actually properly decommodifying people. And then, that can be done for example, here we have a unitary state. Each province has a premier. The premier has the power to put in laws. So he could write a bill, pass a bill that no one should be sold. Should someone be sold, there will be consequences. The same with the president. The president can write laws to say that if this is sold, there will be consequences. The same with the issue of land. Honestly, here on the continent, especially here in Tanzania and mostly in Namibia, what you call this? The Boers came here. They took the land from the natives by force, using guns. they drag people out of the house. So it's pretty much the same way we would enforce the the what you call this, the decommodification of people. The decommodification of land can be done the same way. If I am the village chief, you know, and I tell them that this land cannot be sold. If it's sold, there will be consequences. You'll be dragged out in the streets and flogged to show, to as an example that this should not be done. And then after that, no one in the village will be selling any land. The same can be done at a provincial level. The same can be done at a national level. So really, and really, you know, these people who came and they took the land, they are pretty rich people right now. So honestly, if we implement this law, it's not going to hurt them, you know. They're still going to eat. They're still going to be driving Bentleys. They're still going to be living in those posh areas, having a house that has like 70 rooms when they are just one person. So it's that type of thing. And it won't affect, you know, the normal everyday person, because we are not decommodifying the car that you built. You still will be allowed to sell your car and be rewarded for selling your car. It won't decommodify your apples that you worked hard to build to grow the tree. So you will still be able to sell your apples such that you can make money to take your children to school and make sure your wife is happy at home.
Mhm. Mhm. No, excellent. No,
So
that's
that is
well.
like my
No, that was well presented indeed. You're right there to pointing out that there are certain strategic things that cannot be put for sale. For
mm,
example, the land. And as you were saying,
mm,
that is actually brought to my mind the first paragraph of the Congolese constitution. By the way, not like I do agree with
mm,
the concept of countries. I'm not very Pan-Africanist. For me, if it was depending on me tomorrow, we would have dismantled this concept of countries so that we can obviously have one country that is African country with a lot of provinces.
mm,
Because for me, when we protect these concept of nations, fake nationality created by the
mm,
oppressors, we are actually giving the oppressor too much power and too much privilege. By the
mm,
way, as we're talking, I just remembered one of the concepts in the constitution that says that the land in the Congo, the Congolese land, that's actually the first thing that you read in the constitution. It
mm,
says the land and what is underneath the land belongs to the Congolese states. Means you can buy the land in the Congo, but that land at the end is not really belonging to you. And whatever that
mm,
is under that land belongs to the state. And the state is not one person, the state is the whole nation, right? So
mm,
it means if the situation changes, you have to accept to concede to release that land or a portion of it for a higher purpose that obviously touches the whole nation. Because I think it's African in African paradigm, the right of community is always prevailing above the right of individuals. But when we, that's why even we are talking
mm,
about delinking. The Western philosophy is all about the right of individual is more important than the right of community. That's why you have one person having more, just more than what he actually, not just more than what he needs, but more than what he deserves. You know, now because he has more than what he deserves, he can now spend money to go into space
mm,
travel.
mm, mm,
At the
mm,
same time, people next to him, they're hungry. They don't even have the basic needs, the necessity of life, such as clean water, such as food, and just a simple shelter. And here you have a person who's got five mansions by himself with a family of two kids.
mm,
So it's an aberration if you think deeply about it. So you're definitely right. We need to delink from these sick minds or sick madness of the Western philosophies, sponsored U.S. By the U.S. Mafia government. So that was great one. Thank you very much for that response. I just want to remind our audience that we have this show in relation to our upcoming convention that will take place on the 22nd of July to the 24th of July. It is a convention for decolonization. It is a convention for decolonization. It is the title of the convention is Unity or Perish, African Unity or Perish. And this convention is held by the African Unity Movement for Decolonization. It is actually a movement that is formed by many organizations, different Pan African organizations, globally speaking. Some of them are in the US, in the Caribbean, in UK, in Africa. So we are coming together to host this convention where many people will come, obviously, to speak to us about neocolonialism and what we can obviously, what kind of approach we can go about in decolonizing, the continent and the African people. So it's going to be a very interesting convention. If you haven't yet registered, please go into the description and then register so that you can be part of the convention. It's going to be very interesting, as I've just said. So that is why we're having, this educational program is to actually get our people educated about what is neocolonialism and what are the effects of neocolonialism on our daily basis as African people, on our daily experiences as African people. How do we get affected by neocolonialism? So last week we had a look about the African paradigm by Brother Avi, and today we have had an opportunity to look into 5 Ds, as explained today by Brother Cariso. And obviously, in 2 weeks' time, we're going to have another show dedicated to another important subject. So please, stay tuned. We're going to have more to come. So, Brother Cariso, just maybe the last question to you is, how do you link the wonderful presentation that you've given to us today with this upcoming event convention that we are having? How do you link these two, and how do you see it fits in the whole paradigm of African liberation?
So that's a very good question, my brother. So I think the biggest thing we can take from this presentation is that that each and every one of us has to do that personal inner work, because I did the work myself to decolonize my mind, right? I could just have given this and spoken to you this whole time in Setswana, as I have spoken to you now in English. And also the need for us to deglobalize. Let us not be worried about what is going on in Ukraine between the Russians and Ukrainians. It's not our circus, We have our own problems to be dealing with. If we are busy there, we cannot be watching our own backyard, essentially. And then we must sit amongst ourselves. We must discuss these issues of the Western paradigm, the African paradigm of Ubuntu, and come to realize that the West didn't, these Western countries, they didn't build anything. They needed to come and to take us to their lands, to come and build their cities for them, to build their economies for them, to build their education systems for them, to teach their children, on and on and on. When we come back to Africa, we see the pyramids there in North Africa that have stood for more than 6,000 years. longer than this Bible that they it took brought to us to colonize our minds. Yet the buildings that they build after 10 years, 5 years, they are already cracking. So clearly, that technology there is not as advanced as we think it is. The what you call this, the philosophies they are not as evolved as we think they are. Otherwise they would not have needed to come here to steal us, to go and build for them. They would have built their own pyramids. They would have built their own civilization. They would have built their own great philosophies. But what did they do? They came here to learn from us. After learning from us and going back and teaching their people, they still couldn't build what they needed to build. They needed to come here to come and take us to go and build for them. So we definitely need to have these conversations amongst ourselves as a close groups without them, dealing with their own problems there while we deal with our problems. And then once we can build that trinity of unity, that holy trinity of unity, then we'll be ready to go out into the world and be players in such conflicts between Ukraine and Russia, where we can come in and bring in our 2 cents, coming from our own point of view, coming from our own way of thinking, where we can come in and mediate and find a solution, rather than when we're now what we're doing now of being pawns in a circus that honestly, it's not ours. Honestly, this is not our fight. This is actually an internal affair between Russia and Ukraine. We should not be even trying to do anything. All we could actually ever do is to come in and mediate. But now we are being told by the CNNs and the BBCs that Russia is the boogeyman. But and we are being drawn into being anti-Russia when we should be coming in as a neutral to mediate. So that is one thing I think we can definitely will benefit from if we do this conference and we apply the 5Ds at the conference, and we speak about the 5Ds. We speak about the need for us to speak our languages. We speak for the need for us to think the way our forefathers thought, because they did not go around colonizing people. They did not go somewhere to go and steal someone's land. They did not go around genociding people. So honestly, I don't understand how anyone could look at someone who goes around doing these things as civilized.
Indeed, indeed. That couldn't be nothing closer to civilization. Anyway,
Definitely.
so thank you very much, brother. This was a very successful show. I'm sure everyone who will come across this recorded video, as it will be remaining on Facebook, will learn a lot from that perspective of 5Ds for decolonization. Anyway, so thank you very much for all that have attended, all those that have participated. We will encourage you to share the video with other people that you think may need this kind of knowledge for their own transformation and for their own liberation. And as we said, liberation starts firstly from the mind. If the mind has not yet been liberated, your body can do nothing. Your body can do nothing, because the body is an instrument that responds to the need of the mind or the requirements of the mind. And if the mind has not been yet liberated, then your body can do nothing. So thank you very much, Brother Cariso, for your wonderful presentation. As we started, we're going to also end again. If you have two shoes, now it is a time that you need to sell one and buy a sword. If you have two trousers, now in this year of 2022, it is time that you need to sell one and buy a sword. Why? Because it is a time for revolution. And this revolution is no longer on the streets. This revolution is not about burning cars. This revolution is not about marching down the streets and claiming Black Lives Matter. This revolution is about sitting down and thinking. It is in the mind. Because if the mind is not liberated, your body is nothing. Even if you're driving in the big Mercedes Benz, it might be just another monkey in the cage or in the Mercedes Benz. Peace and power to all Black families. Salute to you all from the Caribbean and here at home. Thank you very much. Peace and power. Until then, we shall meet.
Thank you very much, Brother Kabbalah.